Good morning, or depending on when you're listening to this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio. So today, I'm going to show you round one from an expanded league challenge that we had in Sheffield in the UK. Quick shout out and thank you to PokerSock Sheffield. I will hopefully be able to put a link to them in the description. They are the lovely people who allowed us to record. Just letting you know, we are in the expanded format here, which means we are black and white to Ancient Origins, and due to time constraints on the day, we are playing single game. Now, I'm not going to introduce the players here. I'm going to do that in the video itself, because quite frankly, I don't need to. But a quick correction before we start. Right at the beginning of the video, I introduced Scott Burgess as Scott Simmons. I don't know why. It's a silly mistake. Scott, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. I was wrong. Unreservedly so. There is no excuse. Please forgive me. It is Scott Burgess in this game. His name is on the title of the video correctly. His name will be displayed above him as he plays correctly. It's not Scott Simmons, who is, incidentally, a lovely chap, but he's no Scott Burgess. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, on the left we have Scott Simmons. He only won UK Nationals a couple years ago, no big deal. And on the right we have Corey Kirkham. He was in seniors last year, but in his defence he also got a top 22 paid invite for being one of the top 22 seniors in Europe. So we have a pretty gosh darn good matchup coming up here. We've got two really exceptional players. Corey has now aged up into Masters. You know, think about Ryan Morehouse, the UK player who aged up into Masters and immediately came very close to top cutting world 2 years in a row and is one of the consistently best players in the world. He's only been in Masters for 2 years, and both those years he excelled within Masters. So just because Corey's just aged up from seniors, he is still a very, very good player indeed. And like I said, Scott won UK Nationals a couple years ago. He's had some decent runs at Worlds. He is a very, very strong player indeed. And he's playing metal. How do you know that? Because he just used Battle Compressor to get a couple of metal energy. And it looks like, I'd imagine he'd probably be getting rid of a supporter as well, so that he could VS Seeker for it in later turns. That is a common play that people do on turn 1 with Battle Compressor, a very strong card. And he plays Heavy Ball, which is not currently in Standard, although is being reprinted in our November set Breakthrough. Or if you're listening to this in the future, was reprinted in our November 2015 set Breakthrough. And he uses that to get a Bronze Ore. Now you'll see Scott is playing, he's got a Seismitoad active. What that means is his deck has options. And you see he's actually got double colourless energy in hand, which means he's got the turn 2 Quaking Punch. And he's got the Juniper there. Had to get rid of a Bronzong, unfortunately, which is far from ideal. Most decks would play, I mean, I think the average would be about a free list. I haven't seen Scott's list, but he's got a couple other Bronzongs. But I believe he also got rid of his Sacred Ash there, so potentially could be difficult if Corey starts getting rid of those Bronzongs nice and early. And he gets a Chaldea with Floatstone for infinite retreat, so pretty gosh darn good there. Corey, for his part, he gets a Battle Compressor as well. He's going to be getting at least 1, if not 2 Dark Energy. Might want to get rid of a supporter, depending on what supporters he plays. And if he's playing the Archeops list, he'll be wanting to dump a Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick and an Archeops right about now. So the fact that he's just gone for 1 energy and a Juniper suggests, and firstly, he's got to have some energy in his hand. Oh, no. Oh, he's going to get some energy. So he didn't want too much energy in a discard pile. So you don't want to Battle Compressor a load of energy and then Juniper a bunch of energy as well. So he's going to have 1 attached. He's got 1 in the discard. And presumably he's going to get rid of a couple more here as well with this computer search. Shame that he doesn't play the Archeops build of Yveltal. If he did, then right now he would have Battle Compressed for the Yveltal, for the Archeops. And he'd be looking to try and get his hand down to 0 so that he could use Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick. Don't know if he could, haven't seen his hand perfectly, but the fact that he had a Battle Compressor and a computer search, he may well have been able to pull that off. And of course, had Corey got the Archeops out, that means no Bronzongs for Scott this game. Scott's deck is slowed down, there is a chance. But that's a completely moot point, ladies and gentlemen, because Corey wasn't able to do that because he apparently isn't playing the Archeops list. And we see 2 cards left in his hand. Or is that a Maxie's in his hand? I can't see. No, that looks like a Hex Maniac. I could be wrong about that. There goes the Hypnotoxic Laser. He's going to get an extra bit of damage. It's not going to have a huge effect, of course, because Scott's got that Caldeo on the bench. So he's going to be able to rush in and retreat and get rid of that poison. So it doesn't look like Corey's got a Burbank City Gym in hand, which means that that laser is just doing 10 damage. Of course, Corey's also going to be Trainer Lock next turn, so not the worst thing in the world to play that laser this turn. It gets it out of his hand, it stops him being Trainer Locked. And he hits a Muscle Band, Shame into 1. Can be a dodgy play, but hitting the Muscle Band is having a big effect here. Now, interestingly, the rule on Yveltal's Oblivion Wing forces you to attach the energy to a bench Pokemon if it's in the discard. It isn't an optional thing, so he has to attach it to the Shame in there. So there goes a Bronzong from Scott, and that means he can start getting this energy out. Now, he's going to be wanting to go for some kind of other attacker in the future. It looks like he's content to go with his Seismitoad here, as he plays a Juniper. And to be honest, I don't think going for Seismitoad is the worst idea ever. I'm talking about deck building here. Obviously, if he's built the deck around Seismitoad, he kind of has to go for Seismitoad. What this allows him to do is get Seismitoads going every single turn. It means he's not overly reliant on double colourless energy. And it just makes the deck more consistent. And, of course, as soon as you've got those Bronzongs going, it allows you to pop in some other attackers. Now, I would imagine, because all these metal decks do nowadays, I would imagine that Scott would be playing the non-EX Heatran, the metal type Heatran, the one that came out in Phantom Forces, because it can do 130 damage for 4 energy. Now, that's quite overpriced, but when you're attaching energy with Bronzong, it makes it a lot more manageable. And you see Scott's board state here. He's got the Trainer Lock. He's got the Caldeo with the Floatstone as Corey drops an end, putting both players to 6 cards, refreshing Corey's hand, but also refreshing Scott's. And you see he has got the we have got the Verbank there. So really here, you know, he's got the 2 Seismitoads, both with a double colourless energy, one of a Muscle Band, and you'll notice that he was actually switched into the undamaged Seismitoad, which is a good thing here. And, you know, he's set up to go. Corey, he didn't have a good turn 1. Now, what Corey... and he's got the Ultra Ball, but he doesn't have... Now, that Absol's going to be good, because Absol does a whole bunch of damage dependent on the number of bench Pokemon. I think it's 20 plus 20 for each bench. That's 100 damage, you know, just straight off the bat here. But the big problem is he hasn't got an Yveltal out. Now, one of the things I found, and in this tournament I played Yveltal, and I played against the Seismitoad list... One of the things we find very quickly is that Yveltal, dependent on things like laser flips, can be really, really good against Seismitoad. It basically, you know, it does 20 damage plus 20 for each energy attached to either Pokemon. So a Seismitoad with 2 energy, you're doing a base of 60. So if you've got 2 energy on you, that's 100, while your opponent's doing 50. And there goes that Heatran. There is the double colourless. He just needs 2 metal energy on there. He's got 2 in the discard. He attaches 1 with the first Bronzong. If he's got a second Bronzong, he can attach the other energy there, and he can get going quite nicely here. So, Scott's having a good start, and really, Corey really needs to get an Yveltal out. The thing is, he got the Yveltal, the non-EX, in the active. He got a bunch of dark energy in the discard pile. He set himself up beautifully to just... And we see a... now that computer search, he's going to be going for a supporter or a Bronzong. I think he's just emptied his hand there. So presumably he'll be going for a Sycamore to get a full hand of... Oh no, he has got another card in hand, so he might have gone for the Bronzong. I didn't quite see. But Corey had the non-EX Yveltal active, so being able to do a little bit of damage to that Seismitoad while building up an Yveltal on the bench an Yveltal EX on the bench, would have been a really good start, would have put him in prime position to take down a predominantly Seismitoad-based deck. And he brings up the Yveltal into the active, knowing that that Yveltal is the threat. That's what he needs to be worried about, because that's doing 120 damage right now, which... won't KO a Seismitoad with 120 HP left. Now, if Corey's got a Lysandra, he can pull up the bench Seismitoad and get the KO. Scott's got a full bench of 5. That means the Absol is doing 120 damage for just 2 energy. The problem is, under Trainer Lock, he can play neither a Muscle Band nor a Hypnotoxic Laser to do any extra damage there, which is a little bit of a problem. So he's not going to get the KO here, and that's going to give Scott the opportunity to rush in with Caldea, retreat into something else, and stop Corey getting the attack off. The interesting thing would have been if Scott could have got a second Bronzong that turn, he potentially would have been able to, well, he would have been able to bring up the Heatran to KO the Absol, rather than let it hit the Seismitoad. So Corey here, he's going for his own Seismitoad. The problem is, he's kind of behind the curve here. Now, he can retreat the Absol. The Absol has a retreat cost of 1. But the thing is, Scott isn't. He isn't trainer locked, and Corey is. The big problem that's going to cause is Scott is going to be able to get the... Now, if Scott gets a Muscle Band on that bench Seismitoad, yeah, it's already got 60 damage on it, but Scott's going to be doing 50 per turn, Corey's going to be doing 30 per turn. That's going to give Scott the advantage. Because it'll come down to who gets the first hit, so they'll actually both be 4-hit KOing, assuming no other cards get played. But Scott's got the Caldeo that can rush in and retreat to the Heatran, so after one Quaking Punch, he could then get the KO with the Heatran. Now, and Scott's got his VS Seeker, he's got an AZ. Now remember, AZ forces you to discard the cards attached to the Pokemon, but you put it in your hand. So if he does choose to pick up that Seismitoad with AZ, good news, heals all the damage. Bad news, loses a DCE and the Muscle Band. And you can see he's got free DCEs on the board there. So he is going to be down to his last DCE here. But even though no prizes have been taken, we can see Scott, he's in control of this game. He really is. He's going to get the first prize. And the way to look at it is, what's Corey going to do? What Corey really needs to do is get Yveltal set up. If Corey can set up Yveltal EXs, he will be ahead in this game. Now, Scott's bringing up the Heatran. Now, this is potentially this could backfire. Now, he used Steel Drop there to do 80 damage for free energy, which forces him not to discard. Now, doesn't force him to discard. It would be a better way to put it. Now, this is going to be an interesting turn here, because now Corey's got the laser. Now Corey can drop a Muscle Band. Corey can do all of those things he couldn't do before. Scott could have taken the KO with the Seismitoad, but of course, in order to do so, he would have had to leave a Seismitoad up ready to be KO'd. Not to mention, Corey's now got the Dark Patches available, but he needs the Yveltal EX. That's what's going to win him the game here. And he doesn't seem to be getting it. Now, I'm assuming he plays Yveltal EX. If I were him, I would play that Ultra Ball right now to get an Yveltal EX. Because Scott's deck, if we look at it here, there's a whole bunch of energy down. And Scott's deck is not doing a huge amount of damage. Seismitoad maxes out at 50, and it doesn't look like Scott's playing lasers. Heatran can do 130, but he's got 4 energy on. Yveltal will eat that for breakfast. Yveltal EX. I need to differentiate because there is a non-EX Yveltal out there. So if I'm Corey here, I'm trying to get the... And that's a clever move because that puts the Dark in the discard pile, potentially leaving it open for a Dark Patch. So if I'm him, I'm definitely playing the Ultra Ball for the Yveltal, the EX, and then the Yveltal EX is on the bench. Oh, and that's a fun card to play, that Hex Maniac. That means there will be no Bronzongs next turn, and, crucially, there will be no rush in and retreat. Now, Corey chooses not to play the Ultra Ball here. Now, there are reasons not to. Yveltal's got a retreat cost of 2. It can be brought into the active if you're not ready. And if Corey's got no energy or Dark Patch, then potentially that could have been, a bad thing to bench. But he's got 3 Shamans on the bench, so I don't know. I think there's a potentially. I think he might have missed a trick there. I would have gone for the Ultra Ball for the Yveltal, although it doesn't look. Was there any dark in it? No, sorry. There are dark in a discard pile. He used the second attack to do 100 to get the KO, or 120 to get the KO with the laser. I would have gone. But having said that, if he does use Oblivion Wing, he doesn't get the KO on the Heatran, but then the Heatran was asleep, and he'd played the Hex Maniac to turn off Keldeo. So I would have gone the Yveltal EX there, and I would have used Oblivion Wing. It wasn't a big deal leaving the Heatran in the active, although if the Heatran woke up, it could have KO'd the Yveltal. And this is what happens, and if it sounds like I'm going backwards and forwards here, absolutely I am, because this is what happens when the Pokemon trading card game. You don't know what the right call was. But now that Yveltal EX isn't coming out, so regardless, I would have played the Ultra Ball. Then again, I can't see Corey's hand perfectly. Maybe he's got cards he really doesn't want to get rid of. So down comes an N, and we've got an even game here. The thing that worries me is Scott is starting to build up that Edge-Slash. And remember, Scott's got that Keldeo Float Stone. He can always switch his active, assuming, of course, that Corey doesn't play a Hex Maniac. So as soon as Corey starts using Seismitoad, Scott can just bring up Edge-Slash and stop Seismitoad attacking. And this is what I meant, Edge-Slash will be another example of that alternate attacker. Scott is clearly leading with Seismitoad, but he's got the Heatran and the Edge-Slash to shore up the matchups, to have a non-EX attacker, to have, there's so much that relies on double colourless and strong energy and all of that at the moment that Edge-Slash becomes a really, really good card to use. Here comes the Yveltal EX. Is it potentially a turn too late? Hopefully not. Now he's got the double colourless energy. He's going to have to be careful here. Oh, now this is an interesting move, because now he's going to train a lock Scott, and now Corey he's in charge, because they're both doing 30 damage. Neither of them are going to be dropping a muscle band, but Scott's already taken 90 damage. Here comes the N. A risky move from Corey here, potentially, because there is a possibility here that Scott hits an energy, uses Bronzong, rush in, retreat, and then brings up the Edge-Slash, and Seismitoad, having a DCE on, will be doing no damage to Edge-Slash. Now, he will still be trainer locking Scott, but he won't crucially be doing any damage whatsoever. So that's what Scott will probably be trying to do here. Now, Edge-Slash's ability reads prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from each of your opponent's Pokemon that has any special energy attached to it. The Trainer Lock is an effect done to Scott, so that wouldn't affect it. And there we have the second energy. Does he have the third? It doesn't look like he does. And he doesn't appear to have a Bronzong, and he is Trainer Locked, so that's a downside. But it's not the end of the world, because Corey's not getting the KO this turn. So they're both trainer locked. It's going all right, but Corey's going to have to watch out for that Edge-Slash. Bringing up the Seismitoad when he did was a nice play, because it essentially forced Scott to try and get the Edge-Slash, and as you saw, he missed. I don't mind Corey just sitting there, and I'm sure Corey doesn't really care what I think, to be honest, but I don't mind the Yveltal sitting there on the bench, because he can build up the Yveltal over time and then just bring it up and smash at some point later in the game. He doesn't need to be attacking with it right this second. Ooh, that's a lot of stuff to get rid of, but now, the other thing is, if Corey attacks the Edge-Slash with the Yveltal using Y-Cyclone, he can move the DCE to the bench, then it won't have any energy on, any special energy, and then he can attack the Edge-Slash. And even with Metal Energy on, that Edge-Slash, it does 100 damage with free Metal Energy. It's not a powerhouse attack. So it's going to come down to what Scott can do this turn. If Corey can get one more attack with a Seismitoad, he'll then actually be able to get the KO with the regular non-EX Yveltal. but it doesn't look like it's going to come down to that. I would expect a rush-in retreat, and then the Edge-a-Slash to, he's going to do 100 damage. It's going to be a 2-hit KO. Nope, Scott chooses to carry on where he is. And it's not a terrible play, because as it's going at the moment, Scott doesn't need to come in and get the KO. What he can afford to do is just sit back and do a bit of damage and then come in and get the KO with Edge-a-Slash. And there is Steel Shelter, turning off any special conditions. Now, if Corey's got a Dark Energy in hand, then it's quite the play. Oh, now he's going up to 120, and now he could get the KO. That Edge-a-Slash is now doing 120 damage and could get the KO. If Scott leaves a Seismitoad active, Corey can attach a Dark Energy to Seismitoad, retreat for free energy, and then get the KO doing 50 with the non-EX Yveltal, putting an energy onto the EX Yveltal, and kind of rolling from there. Of course, if that happens, Corey's going to have no attacker that doesn't have special energy, and that Edge-a-Slash is going to be a problem. So, it's kind of like a game of chicken at the moment with these two Seismitoads. Neither player really wants to go away from Seismitoad, but sooner or later they're going to have to. The problem is, Corey next turn, like I say, he can retreat the Seismitoad and get the KO with the non-EX Yveltal. But then he's down to 3 prizes. Scott brings up the Edge-a-Slash EX, and all Corey's got is an Yveltal with a DCE that can't attach an Edge-a-Slash. Now, having said all of this, and I hope I'm not being too confusing here, because I am jumping ahead, in many different ways. If Corey could find a VS Seeker or a Hex Maniac, that would change everything. Because Corey would be able to get the KO on the Seismitoad with the Yveltal EX. Scott then gets the KO with Edge-a-Slash. Corey can then play a Hex Maniac, and with 4 energy on the Edge-a-Slash, that opens it up for Corey to get the KO with Yveltal EX on that Edge-a-Slash. But he'll need a Hex Maniac to turn off Edge-a-Slash's ability. And it doesn't look like he's got it, which is a shame, although I can't see his hand perfectly. With a Hex Maniac here, Corey could potentially get the KO with that Yveltal. Now, you're doing 80 for the 4 energy on the Edge-a-Slash, which means he'd need 3 energy on Yveltal to get the KO. Because he'd be doing 80 plus the 60 for the free energy for him would be 140, plus the 20 base damage, plus the 20 for the muscle band would be 180. So if Corey can get a 3rd energy and a Hex Maniac, and I know that's a lot to ask for, but if he can get the 3rd energy and the Hex Maniac, he could potentially get the KO on that Edge-a-Slash. And because there's 4 energy on that Edge-a-Slash, all Corey actually needs is 1 Hex Maniac, 1 turn, and he's getting the KO. If that happens, all Scott's got left is that really weak-looking Seismitoad, and now the whole game's turned around again. And Corey didn't attach that turn. I would have liked to have seen him attach, even if to the benched Yveltal, because he's only KOing the Edge-a-Slash with Hex Maniac. It doesn't really matter if he attaches more energy. Now, I'm trying to see what that last card is. It might be a Team Flare Grunt. It could be a Verbank City Gem. I can't quite see. He's got a Dark Patch, which he can use to get another energy on the benched Yveltal EX. Start building that bad boy up. And it was a Verbank City Gem. And there is the Laser. Edge-a-Slash no longer has immunity. Ooh, Tails. Although he even said that, even if he hits ahead, Caldeo can just rush in and get rid of it. 2 Dark Patches for Corey. And presumably he's going to go for the non-EX Yveltal so that he can be ready to do the big attack for 100 if he can't. And, he knows how many Hex Maniac he's playing, how many of them and VS Seeker he's got left. Now he's setting up quite nicely. This is going to do a total of 70 damage, meaning next turn he can do 120 damage, and he will get the KO on that Edge-a-Slash. So he doesn't even need the Yveltal EX to get the KO on Edge-a-Slash. Steel Shouter comes down again, so that's going to get rid of the poison, which isn't the end of the world, to be honest. It's really not a big problem getting rid of the poison, because he's still within a 120 hit. So, now Scott's still very much in the driving seat, but he needs another attacker here. He's going to KO the non-EX Yveltal, go down to 2 prizes, and then he's going to need to KO something on the bench. He's going to probably need a Lysandra. Now, it looks like there's a Lugia in his hand, and he's got 2 Bronzong out. So, just he could put down the Lugia and just start attaching energy and kill something like a Shaman. He'll need 6 energy to kill the Shaman, but that's really not the end of the world when you've got 2 Bronzong on the bench. But he needs to start kind of getting... and he's got the Muscle Band, so that will bring it down to 5 energy. But he's going for the conservative Seismitoad route, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Now, he's actually choosing to retreat the Edgeslash into the Seismitoad, and this is an eminently sensible play. No, it's a Dialga, sorry. It's a Dialga EX, which is even better, because he'll KO a Shaman for 2 energy. Seismitoad will get the KO here. He'll do the last 50 damage needed. And he gets energy in the discard pile so that he can use Bronzong to put it onto Dialga. And it really doesn't matter if that Seismitoad is going down this turn, but it doesn't matter. There's no points for... and in Japan, in some tournaments, there actually is. But in the UK, there's no points for winning 6-0 or anything like that. Scott's playing the numbers game. He is now trainer locking Corey. He's down to 2 prizes, and... next turn, he can just leave the Caldeo active and then use the Bronzong, because remember, Bronzong can only be used for bench Pokemon. He can use the Bronzong to attach the energy to Dialga, he can retreat the Caldeo, and then maybe kill the active Yveltal if he's got a Muscle Band, or else just Lysandra and kill one of the Shaman, and that'll be the game. So it really makes no difference. And Corey there was probably going to VS Seeker for a Hex Maniac to stop that happening, but he can't because he's trainer locked. So a lot of the things I was saying in this game, I was going for a more aggressive route. Scott has gone for... he's played a very chilled out game, but it's going to lead to him winning this. Now, it doesn't really... now, Corey has done a very sensible thing here. He's retreated the Yveltal because with a Muscle Band and 2 more energy, that Dialga is going to kill the Yveltal. But it's probably just delaying the inevitable here, because if Scott's got a Lysandra, he's going to win this game. Corey's still got 3 prizes to take. And there's the DCE, and there's a VS Seeker for the Lysandra, and he is going to kill one of the Shaman and win the game. Unfortunately, a slow start for Corey there, from which he couldn't really recover. He needed those Yveltal EXs faster than he unfortunately got them. As for Scott, Scott did a lot of things right that game. You see a lot of the subtle moves he did. Rather than going for the big KO, he was constantly using Seismitoad. He played quite a slow, relaxed game, but you saw all the way through it was thought out. He trained a lot Corey, he slowed Corey down, and he made sure that he only took the big KOs when he needed to, and other than that, he slowed Corey down. An excellently played game by both players. Unfortunately, not having the Yveltal EX out early really did, that probably was the difference in the game. Make sure you like this video, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you comment. Try and be nice in the comments. Say mean things, but say them in a nice way. Let's all be friends today. And of course, make sure if you haven't subscribed to PTCG Radio, you have. And if you have subscribed, you get a friend to subscribe. And regardless, make sure you check out Wassy Plays, my video game channel. It's like this, but for video games. I have a sneaking suspicion if you try it, you just might like it. I will be back in the very near future with some more Pokemon games, including the final from this particular tournament. So look out for them. Look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.